Today, you'll get clear framework to face adversity, write the limited stories you were handed and design in motherhood on your terms with 5 actions that you can start this week. If you learned something, follow the show and subscribe on YouTube at Stacey Chillemi Advisor. One tap helps more women find real help. My guest, Cheri Bergeron, author and advocate, helping women replace outdated scripts with practical, self directed paths to motherhood. What's one adversity that you were faced that forced you to rewrite your story, and what changed first, Cheri?
Well, the first thing was I really was stuck in the traditional fairy tale to think that I had to have a man before I could become a mother. And that
Mhm.
really kept me in a continuous loop of trying to find the right person, but always falling apart in this, do I think I could have children with this person? And so I think that as in a modern age, we can release ourselves from that as kind of a hard-coded fairy tale. There are a lot of different ways to have a family, and that's just one of them. So I think that was the first thing that I had to let go of, but I went through a lot of messy relationships before I got to that point.
Wow. And for women considering solo motherhood, what are the first 3 steps you recommend?
Well, first, I would just say search your heart to know if this is really what you want to do, because it is a big commitment to be a person doing this on their own. But for me, I felt very driven to become a mother and that it was my purpose. And then I would say, make a plan, pursue your various options. There are donors, there are surrogates, there are adoption, foster parenting. I was a foster parent at one point. There's so many paths to motherhood, and you really have to figure out which one is right for you. And then I would say be very intentional about the village that you put around you, because even in a nuclear family, children need all kinds of influences. And so just because you're a single parent doesn't mean that you are the only one raising your child. And so have the conversations with people that are in your life and see if they are going to be supporting you and go on this journey with you. And if they aren't, you know what? That's okay. You can intentionally create a village to support you and your family. There are a lot of community groups, there are single parents organizations. What I just want you to know is you can make this dream come true, and I want you to feel empowered and know that you have options.
I love that. How do you navigate family pushback or cultural expectations with grace and boundaries?
Yes. Well, I think boundaries are one of the most important things. I received resistance even from family members that I somehow maybe didn't deserve motherhood, or that I had pursued a career and that I had wasted my chances. And I think ultimately, you can say, you know what, this is my life. This is my dream. And who are you to stand in my way? You can either support me or please step aside. And that was kind of the decision that I made. So I think we just have to claim our ability to become a parent on our own terms for ourselves and not listen to those voices. I think that's the biggest thing.
I love that answer. Now, what are smart ways to build a support around childcare swaps or community or co-parenting by choice?
There are a lot of communities about single mothers by choice. In fact, there's an organization called Single Mothers by Choice, and they have local chapters and things like that. Or there are single parent organizations. It doesn't even have to be single parents by choice. There are a lot of people that are raising children on their own. And so you really are part of a much bigger community than you think. So I would just say don't isolate. Get
Yeah.
in with a group of people that are walking a similar journey, and the right people that you are meant to be with are going to come to you.
I love that. Now, decisions fatigue is real. What is your simple decision framework when it comes to feeling overwhelmed?
Feeling overwhelmed. Well, I think that sometimes one, you just have to step back and take a
Mhm.
moment, right? Don't we, even if we are in a intact family, they can still be crazy. We have to take a moment for ourselves. I think we have to quiet our nervous system, because if we don't do that, then we can't even think clearly. So I would say that's step one. And then the second thing I think is to put our problem into perspective. How big is this really? some of the smallest things can be maddening to me, but I think when you step back and say, is this solving world hunger or world peace? Well, if not, is my child in danger? That's a big thing. Yes or no? No? Okay, maybe we can let this go. Maybe my house doesn't have to be perfect. Maybe we don't have to make every social engagement. I think we put too much pressure on some of those pieces, and if we let go of it a little bit, I think life can be a little more sane.
Oh, I agree 100% with you. What should women know at high level about the main pathways, like fertility options, conception, adoption, fostering, before they dive deep into it?
Well, I do think getting educated is important. And so that's why at Cherie's Choice, the nonprofit I started, we provide that kind of education and even workshops for women. So, I think part of it is getting in tune with what you really want. What are your priorities and what are your non-negotiables? I wanted to become a mother by any means possible, but some
Mhm.
women say, they need to be my genetic children, or maybe they have a heart for fostering. And I think going through a process of understanding what's important for you is really a very critical step in the process. And then you start to learn about the paths to get there. But I think you have to really start with, what are my priorities? What does my dream look like?
I love that. Now, what are the most common myths that you hear about these routes, and what are the truths?
Well, first, that you have to be married to become a mother. That was one big prerequisite. Really, I would have been better off putting love aside and pursuing my dream of motherhood rather than getting into a toxic relationship. So, I really say let love find you in its own time. Force fitting a fairy tale can have very tragic outcomes, as mine did, whether it's divorce or abuse or things like that. Really take the time to find the right partner for you because you deserve that.
Right.
And then, you can become a mother and then find a relationship later. Just because you choose motherhood without a partner doesn't mean you're going to be uncoupled forever. You
Yeah.
can ultimately find that person and you're going to come from a position of strength rather
Right.
than desperation. And I think there's power in that. So to
Yeah.
me, real female empowerment involves knowing what your options are and proactively navigating your path versus allowing it to happen to you.
I love that. Now, how can someone prepare emotionally for waiting periods, setbacks, or loss without losing hope?
Oh my gosh, that's the hardest part of infertility, Shelley. It's a roller coaster ride. Infertility is absolutely a roller coaster. I always say that I measured my life in 30-day increments and that
Mm.
I would start with a tremendous feeling of optimism, only a few weeks later to just be devastated. And so I think one thing is, don't isolate. It can be a very isolating process because other people don't understand. Maybe your friends have children, your parents, had it work out for them. Find sources of support. So there are a lot of support groups. I've got them listed on Cherie's Choice. I wrote the book also so that women would know that they aren't alone in the struggle, Mission Motherhood, because it is such an isolating process. So really try to take care of your mental health while you're in this process of waiting and working hard to become a mother, because it really is kind of a marathon.
Right. Now, what are the top conversations to have early on about money, time, and the backup plans?
Well, I would say, just the way we plan our career, we have to
Mhm.
plan our path to motherhood. And so that's what I counsel young women about. Make a plan. Maybe it's about freezing your eggs, for example. That is something that preserves some of your options. I think considering the various paths to motherhood, not being so tied to one path, but being more open to where your life leads. And then, having confidence in yourself that the journey that you're taking is the one you were meant to have. I think those are some of the critical pieces.
I agree with you. What do you wish more workplaces understood about the non-traditional family building?
Oh my gosh. Well, I love that topic because infertility is a medical condition. It
Hmm.
isn't something that should be shamed or, it needs to be prioritized. And so I think that if employers are committed to female employees and nurturing female employees, then they need to consider a broad range of family building options, which includes things like IVF. It includes things like surrogacy. We haven't even talked about same-sex couples and their desire to have beautiful families. So if you want to be a top-notch employer, then fertility coverage is something that is critical to have.
Oh, 100%. Now, how do we spot the perfect mom trope and how do we replace it with a realistic resident story?
Well, I think, don't we all try to expect this perfect, this idea of the perfect mother, but aren't we all just being a little bit too hard on ourselves? I
Oh,
think what our children really need, let's think about what our children need. They don't need the perfect Halloween costume. They don't need the cleanest house in the world. What they need is love and acceptance and commitment, and they need your time. And if you're
yeah.
giving those things, then the rest of the pieces are just icing. And so as moms, I think we have to prioritize, because when we look for perfectionism and our mental health goes south, then we probably sacrifice one of those very important things of love and acceptance and our time and those kinds of things. So I think we're far better letting ourselves off the hook and focusing on those four big things our kids really need.
Oh, yes. I think you're so right when it comes to that. I think people try to strive for this make-believe perfection of what a mother is supposed to be, and it doesn't exist. You can only be the best you can be. And like you said, the most important things that kids want is love and attention and security, knowing that you're there for them. And if they have those things, then they'll be very happy with what they have. They don't need all the glamorous things that parents sometimes, put too much of I guess overbearing on. They just they think they prioritize it wrong, but it's really just the love, the affection, the understanding, being there when they need you, and that's so important.
I agree. And I think a lot of it comes in with financial stressors. We think we
Mhm.
have to have elaborate birthday parties and we think we have to have all of these gifts that our kids want. But frankly, haven't we seen where you wrap up a gift and then the kid plays with the box? And
Yeah,
so I think that our children can have, we actually bring that materialism to our children. They're not born with it. And so
yeah.
I think that contentment is a really important piece of things too, and not having to chase the next object.
Oh, I agree. What's your 2-minute original story script for telling a child about their path, their age appropriate and loving?
Oh my gosh, yeah. Um, what I start with, and I really do believe that full transparency is so important. So my children were donor conceived. And so some people are met with fear, but what I say is, I wanted you so badly that I was willing to go to great lengths, and I created you very intentionally. And there was just nothing that was going to keep us apart. And so I sought help from a doctor, and I used ingredients that were going to
Mhm.
make sure that you were the healthiest child possible. And so they know it from the beginning. And when that's true, when you keep secrets, then children think that there's something to be ashamed of. But when
Yeah,
you speak their story with love and with truth,
yeah.
they know that there's nothing that they have to be ashamed of. And I've heard many children of single mothers who have said that someone would say to them, "Oh, you don't even have a dad." And it didn't land to them because they had no shame around it. It was like,
Yeah.
well, yeah, okay, okay, yeah, that's right. And so
Right.
I think we're the ones who teach our children shame if by withholding information from them. But when we're open and honest in love, I think we set them free.
Oh yeah, I agree. I agree totally. And I love how you use the word ingredients. I love that.
With my
It's like a
son, yeah, I talked about superhero sperm. We used superhero sperm with you. That was the first, conversations with him when he was like 4.
I love that. I love that so much. Now, when guilt or comparison hits, what's your 1 minute interrupt to get them back to center?
So what do you mean by guilt, or what do you mean
So
about?
when if guilt or comparison hits, so basically if you might feel guilty, did you ever feel guilty that oh I couldn't give my child a son, yeah, I mean a father, or if it, maybe they missed out on something, and you try to compare, well, so and so, has the happy family with the husband, and how do you right away stop that from progressing into something that's more that's not really true?
Right. Well, you bring up a great point because I think we grieve the fairy tale. But the
Hmm.
reality is that a lot of married couples don't have that fairy tale either. So,
Hmm.
we never know what happens behind closed doors. But of course, there were
Yeah,
times that I thought, wow, wouldn't have been wonderful to have the idyllic relationship, have this wonderful partnership.
yeah,
But I intentionally created a village for my children that was loving and supportive. And so I just took a different view of family. And frankly, guilt is a wasted emotion. I'm giving my children a life full of love and all that dedication, and I'm giving them a wonderful life. So, I'm just accepting that my family looks different, but it's still beautiful.
right. I love that. Now, I'm going to give you a scenario. You tell me what you think or what first comes to mind. So, dating while pursuing a solo motherhood, what's your boundary line?
Mm. Well, you have to definitely put your children first, is my opinion. So, for the first 7, 8 years of my children's life, I didn't date at all because I was solely focused on them. And it actually was kind of freeing because, ladies, how many of you struggle with how to balance the time between what you give to your children who are constantly needing you and your husband? I didn't
Hmm.
have that conflict when my children were young. So there's a silver lining to all kinds of things. And then as my children were getting more independent, then I could peel off a little bit more time for myself. And ultimately, I did find someone to be with as well. So, I think the most difficult thing is bringing people in and out of your child's life. I think that is the thing that can cause them to be very afraid that there's no permanency if
Right.
they, feel like it's a revolving door of people that they're becoming attached to. So that would be the one thing I would guard against.
I like that. Now, how about if loved ones keep offering unsolicited advice, what do you say?
Well, what do you say? I mean, the thing is that I think I would tend to get kind of defensive about those things, but I think it's
Yeah,
kind of like thank you for sharing, and but I think being very firm in the life that you want to create is the secret ingredient there because
yes.
when my family members might say, well, you didn't deserve to be a mother, or trying to tell me what kind of mother to be, I was very secure in my purpose and in the
Hmm.
job I was doing. And so that wouldn't sink in any way because I was very confident in the mother that I was being to my children.
I think what irritates me the most is a lot of times, family members will have comments to say and they will solicit comments, but they haven't walked through your shoes yet. They don't know how it feels to be you. They don't know what your life felt like. They don't know what your life feels like right now. And it's a totally different environment where you came from versus where they came from. So, unless you walk through someone's shoes, you don't really have the right to voice your opinion and say, and give your opinion unless your opinion is asked for,
Well, that's true.
and so
Yeah,
I
you're
feel
right. And I think I heard something recently that said that we're better off meeting uh, something we don't understand with curiosity as opposed to judgment. And so
yeah,
maybe asking questions to try to get a greater understanding is a better path to pursue versus assuming we know and creating judgments of someone.
I like that. That's an excellent statement, 100%. Now, explaining your choice at work, what's the professional private script?
Well, now I do this full time, so I get to do this on my own terms. But
Yeah.
what do you mean in terms of
So,
when I was at work as a single parent?
yeah, so if you're at work and you're a single parent and people might not know you very well, they don't know your private life, and they might, maybe they'll interject and say, "Oh, you and your husband," or or start asking questions about, who the other half is. Like, how do you explain your choice while, that, you have chosen this way of having children and it's not the traditional way, but it's the way that works for you.
Yeah. I'm unapologetic about my life actually, and pretty much an open book. So if you read my book, Mission Motherhood, you'll see that it's unflinching and it's kind of the real raw truth. I think just saying, look, I felt like this was the best path for me to have a healthy family, and it's absolutely the right decision for me. So I think if you're confident in that, then your coworkers can accept that or not. But I actually think that being a little bit more vulnerable in those conversations with coworkers really helps create a greater bond
Yeah.
than just kind of keeping things very restricted. I think if you lead with some of your heartfelt intentions, then
Hmm.
that is met with compassion.
I agree. Now, big milestones feel heavy. What's your quick ritual to anchor joy?
Milestones feel heavy. In what way do you think milestones feel heavy?
Sometimes when we put expectations on, okay, in 3 years I should be married and I should have, a husband and this should be here and I should be doing this and and then my children will be this age and this is how my life should be at this age kind of thing.
Right. So I think that we have to let go of some of those constraints that we put on ourselves and probably extend more grace to one another. I think that was particularly true for me when I was trapped in that traditional fairy tale. I
Yeah.
think releasing that and saying my life is going to evolve the way that it was meant to evolve. And
Yeah.
I'm going to do my very best and I'm going to pursue what is meaningful for me and just let go of some of those pieces. So, we're trying to control our lives, right? And there's
Yeah.
some pieces of it that aren't fully in our control. But I think
Yeah.
if we can focus on the things that we can and let the other things evolve, like I think
Right.
in child rearing, it's that way too. I'm going to get my child to do this. They're going to be potty trained by the age of, 1.5 or 2 or whatever. And guess what? Your child's going to develop in their own time. And if we try to
Yeah.
force it, I think when we force it is when we create some of the worst outcomes.
Oh, I agree 100%. I agree 100%. Now, tell me what made you want to write the book Mission Motherhood and tell us what it's about.
Well, I went into my journey to motherhood very naive, I think, and ill-informed. And I made a number of missteps along the way. And so the heart of the book is really to be kind of a love letter to other women going through it and be kind of a girlfriend's guide as if you were sitting across the table with a glass of wine and sharing kind of some of your deepest things. Oh,
Yeah.
you got the hearts going. And I think that's really what it was, what it's meant to be. And so I wanted to help other women become mothers with more clarity and more confidence and more choice than I did. And so really that was the heart behind the book.
I love it. And tell us about your organization. When did the organization start and what motivated you to want to take the step to actually create an organization?
Well, I think it's the issue that our society doesn't share a lot of information about reproductive timelines,
Yes.
fertility, family building options. And so I was lulled into a false sense of security, thinking that I had all the time in the world because we see in the news people having kids in their 40s or in their 50s. There's so many celebrities and things, but there are some really hard timelines that we need to understand as women. And so I believe that true female empowerment means planning our path to motherhood just the way that we plan our careers, so that
Yeah.
we're really thinking about our options and we're making plans and we're modifying them along the way, of course, as we do. But I feel very passionately that women have the tools so that they can chart their path to motherhood the way that it feels right to them, sort of on their own terms. And so that's the mission behind Cheri's Choice, which is the nonprofit.
Now, if they wanted to find Sharice Profit, where would they go to find it?
CherisChoice.com is the site. It's my first name and then choice.com. There's resources there. After the first of the year, we're going to start providing workshops so that women can connect with other women and have sounding boards for some of those conversations. Or you can even do it in a self-paced way if you're more private and you want to go through that kind of on your own. But there's a lot of information about support groups, surrogacy, all of the kinds of resources so that you can become more informed about your path to motherhood.
I love it. I love it. Now, I have a question for you. So, Sharice, listeners were promised 5 concrete actions. Would you share 5 things that they could do this week to move from stuck to self-directed?
Sure. I think the first thing is to really search your heart and your intentions around what your vision is for motherhood. I think the next thing is what you're willing to commit to motherhood. So, are you in a place in your life where you're ready to be selfless and put some of your own objectives to the side? I think is the second thing. I think the third is to start exploring what are some of the options to motherhood. There are so many different paths, so go and check out some of those things. And I
Hmm.
think four would be, get a fertility assessment because it's really good at any age. You can get a fertility assessment and really know where you are on that path. And then I would
Yeah.
say the final thing is think about your village and what is that village that's going to support you, accept your choice, and walk with you as you're creating your family.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Now, where can people find you? Because you have 2 websites, and what is the other website about?
Sure. The other website is really about my book. So, and I am a speaker as well. So, if there are people who would like to have this conversation live or virtually, that's something that could be arranged. And you can get information about my book there. So that's my CheriBergeron.com. But then Cheri's Choice is all about the nonprofit and figuring out how I can help you chart your path to motherhood.
I love that. So you do speaking, you're an author. Do you do any consultations or one-on-ones with people as well?
I will arrange those, absolutely. And or connect you with other coaches depending on what your needs are. If you want someone who's in your local area or things like that. I know a number of coaching resources and support groups. So, it just really depends on what your path is and if I have information that can support you. But I just want you to know there is hope for you to create the family you dream about. And it
Mhm.
takes courage and it takes perseverance and it takes a village that loves you, and anything is possible.
Anything is possible. It's so true what you said. You could have that fairy tale, and anybody could have it. And just like Disney says, you could ha your dreams could become your reality. If you really want something and you could really look into it and be persistent and be resilient and find and figure out a way, because anything you want could happen. I put it out there, you manifest it, and you do what you can and you reach out to different support groups like you mentioned and different people and organizations and get the right directions and the right help, and it's amazing what miracles can happen. And I really thank you so much, Sharice, for coming on the show today and for sharing your amazing story. Your story itself is truly amazing, and I give you kudos for all the courage you have. You did something that was not the norm as we were growing up. You did something that was in your heart, something you wanted to do, something that you felt you were meant to be, and you went ahead and you did it, and you didn't care about what society thought or what family members or friends around us thought, because you always know that their mouths are always chattering, because everyone has to say something,
Yeah.
and you did what your heart wanted to do. And motherhood meant a lot to you, and you focused on becoming a mother, and you gave up a lot of things to become a mom. But it was the thing that you wanted the most in life, and it gave you the most joy and the most happiness. And now you're showing other people who want to become mothers and are have struggling to become mothers, and they're figuring out ways and how to do it, and you're there to help them. So I just want to say thank you, because your story is amazing. You're amazing. And I
Oh,
think what you're
thank
doing
you.
right now is amazing.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to share my story. And I would just say, you can write your own fairy tale. It may not look the way that you expected, but it can still be beautiful.
Exactly. 100%. Oh, thank you so much, Cherise, for being on the show and sharing everything that you shared today. Your wisdom, your knowledge, and just your beauty inside and out was
Oh, thank
was
you.
wonderful. Thank you. You have a great day.